Good evening, everyone. Welcome as we learn the amazing limud of Chok Yisrael for Parshas Ki Sisa, Day 6, Yom Shishi, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. And we start our adventure, since it's Friday, with the Perek of Mishnayos in Seder Tarais, and we're learning the 11th Perek of Masechtas Para. Now, not many people in the world learn Masechtas Para. Masechtas Para is very appropriate for this time of the year because we know that in order to be able to eat the Korban Pesach, we need to be tar from any tumas mace, any corpse contamination, which could only be if we're sprinkled on the third and the seventh day with the mechatas, with the water mixed with the ash of the para aduma. And as we know, this mechatas necessitated incredible tara, incredible purity. So, Sloiches, as we learned the first Mishnah in the 11th Perek of Masechtas Para, Sloiches shenicha migula. If you had a jug that had mechatas that you left uncovered, ubo mitzah mechusa, and you found it covered, that's a problem. Because the person who covered it was not likely purified to the standard of the purity of the mechatas, and therefore psula, it disqualifies the contents of the jug. Henicha mechusa, if you found it covered, ubo mitzah megula, and now you find it uncovered. Now you would think that's surely no good, not so fast. No human would uncover a jug. They would cover it. They would not only uncover it. So therefore, you assume that it wasn't done by a human. Now, if it's in a place that a weasel could have drank from it. Now, remember, a weasel, when it drinks, it spits back in, and therefore it disqualifies the mechatas. Or if a snake drank from it, according to Rabbi Gamliel, or if it was in a place that dew would have fell into it in the nighttime, so then psula, then the contents is possible. Otherwise, it's not. Now, hachatas, the water with the ashes of the para aduma, eino nitzola b'tzamid pasel. If it's in an earthenware vessel that's tightly sealed, normally an earthenware vessel that's tightly sealed, even though it's in under the same roof as a corpse, it's tar, because a clay cheres cannot be contaminated from the outside, only me'aviroi, only from its inside. Now, therefore, if it's tightly covered, the tumah can't get in. But it doesn't help if it contains the water with the ash of the paraduma. And the reason is because it says that it has to be b'makom tar. It has to be in a place that's tar. And this house that has a corpse is not a place that's tar. And therefore it's disqualified. However, mayim she'ena mekudashin, if it's water that was not yet mixed with the ash of the paraduma, that water does not get disqualified from being used. Nitzalin b'tzamid pasel can be saved if it's tightly covered, because the demand to be in a makom tar is only if it already has the ash mixed inside it. Kol ha'safik tahor l'truma. Now here is an interesting thing. Let me tell you how it works with truma. If truma becomes tamei, it has to be burned. If it's tar, it's of course used. If it's a safek, then we say tluyan. You can't use it, but you can't burn it because it might be good and you're not allowed to destroy truma. So truma, that is a doubt, it's tluyan. So kol ha'safik tahor l'truma, whatever whatever doubt where we say and resolve that in this doubt it's tar for truma, tar l'chatas. It's also tar if it's such a doubt in the case of chatas. Kol atoli l'truma, anything that in the case of truma we would say it's suspended, you can't use it, nor can you burn it. Well, by the mechatis, we have no scruples of destroying it. Therefore, nishpach l'chatis. If it's mechatis, it has to be spilled out. Im osu al gabov tahoros. If, let's say, you take that water that was supposed to be spilled out, and you sprinkle a person on the third and the seventh day, and then he handles tyrus, then he handles, let's say, truma. Since it's a case of doubt, then that truma is tluyos. You can't destroy it, and you can't use it. Harifafais. Now this is interesting. Rifafais are wooden screens. Now wooden screens, which are made by crisscrossing or perpendicular slats, making very small holes, and therefore they serve as screens, at least to keep out the big bugs, they cannot be mekabel tumah, because they're pshute clayates, they're flat clayates that don't have a container, and therefore they're not mekabel tumah, and therefore tahoros l'kodesh v'letruma u'lechatas. They are tar, they're not susceptible to tumah, and therefore they're tar for kachim, for truma, and even for the mechatas. And furthermore, they're, besides not being a container, not being a keli, and therefore not being mekabel tumah, you can't sit on them because they're very fragile and they would break, and therefore they're not susceptible to the tumah of hesed if a zav or a nida would sit upon it. However, Rabbi Eliezer Omer hara'odais, these are window covers whose slats are a little stronger, tmeyos l'chatas. There we say we're afraid in the higher standard of a chatas, although they're pshute clayates and they can't be mekabel tumah as a container, as a keli, but some people might sit on them since they're harder, and then they would become tameh. If their derech is to sit on them, they would become tameh from the hesed of a zav or a nida. So we're careful with this, and they're considered tameh for the mechatas. Devela shel truma, a cake of fig of truma, shenofla l'seich mechatas, that fell into the mechatas. Now remember, mechatas, it's one of the unusual things about the mechatas. Shlomo HaMelech said about the paraduma, Amarti echkema, I thought I would be wise, v'hi rechaika mimeni, but it's very far from me. One of the unusual laws of the mechatas is that while it's metar tameim, it renders tar, one who has corpse contamination, but it's metame tahirim. The water is metame other things. So it's an amazing thing, which is not so amazing because it's like medicine. Medicine could heal a sick person, but hurt a healthy person. Right? So here, the water of the mechatas, while it cleanses one who is a corpse contamination, but it does cause contamination to something that's tar. And therefore, devela shel truma, a piece of a cake of figs, of truma, shenafla l'seich mechatas, that fell into the water with the ash, unitola, and a person picked it out, va'achala, and ate it. So im yesh ba kabeya, if the piece of the fig was the size of a beya, which is possible to transmit tuma, then bein tameya, bein tahira, whether the piece was tameh before it fell into the water, or even if it was tar when it fell in, since even if it's tar for truma, it's considered tomei for chatas, therefore it's matame the water. And once it's matame the water, so then the water is matame the fig, and if the person eats it, because it's a fig of truma, if you eat truma tameya, then va'oichlo chayiv misa. The one who eats it is chayiv misa. Now, he's chayiv misa because even though it's not a beya, he's chayiv misa for eating it, because he eats truma tameya, he's chayiv misa. Ein bo kebeya, if the fig does not have a shear of a beya, so it cannot transmit to tuma, so then hamayim tahirim, the water that the water that the fig fell into is tar, because the fig is matame to the water, but the oichlo chayiv misa. Why? Because remember we said the water, he picked it out, so he touched the water of the meichatas, so the meichatas makes him tamei, and even though the fig is not the shear of a beya, but it is the shear of a kazayas, so now that he's tamei, he's eating truma, so that means he's eating truma tameya, so he's chayiv misa for eating truma tameya. Misa, of course, bidei shemayim. Rabbi Yaisi says, "B'tahoira hamayim tahirim." If a piece, the fig was tar, and it fell into the water, then if it's even if it's the size of a beya, if it's tar for truma, Rabbi Yaisi holds it's tar for mechatas as well. He doesn't hold it at chumrah, and then the water will be considered tahirim. Hatar lechatas. This is a real unusual case. Hatar lechatas. Here we have a man, let's say Michal Avram, who went through all of the rigorous restrictions to be tar from the mechatas. Now, one of the halachas of Tumah and Tara is that if you come into contact with mayim she'uvim, with drawn water, you become tamei. That's because they didn't want people to think that a shower renders a person tar. It's not the shower that renders a person tar, it's the mikveh that renders a person tar. So if a person goes into drawn water, he becomes tamei. So at tar lechatas, if Michal Avram was tar for a chatas, and he went into the water to, let's say the hyssop that he was going to use fell into the water. So he put sheichnas roishe v'rubai l'soich meichatas. He put his head and the majority of his body into the water in order to recover the hyssop. Nitma, he becomes tamei because he put his head and his body into mayim she'uvim, into drawn water, and he becomes a sheni l'tama, and therefore he's not roy anymore for the meichatas. Once he's not roy anymore for the meichatas, then he's not allowed to come in contact with the water, and therefore now the water, which is an avatuma, makes him a rishon l'tama. Kalaton bias mayim midivrei Torah. Anyone who has to go to the mikveh midoraisa, that means that he has a tumah midoraisa. Somebody touched the sheretz, whatever it is, he has to go to the mikveh midoraisa. Touch the sheretz, he touched the maze. He has to go to the mikveh midoraisa. Mitame es HaKodesh, ves HaTruma, ves HaChulim, ves HaMaiser. So such a person who has to go to the mikvah midoraisa makes tamei kachim, makes tamei truma, makes tamei chulin, makes tamei maiser sheni, and v'oser al bias hamikdash. If he enters into the mikdash, he'll get chorus. Once he goes to the mikvah, la'achar bi'asai, once he goes to the mikvah, now he is a full yom. That means that he went to the mikveh, but he has to wait the next stage, and that is he has to wait for Herav Shemesh, for the setting of the sun. Until the setting of the sun, he has a din of Sheni L'Tumah. So now, I should tell you very quickly that Tumah goes in descending order. If you yourself, if the item itself is Tumah, but it can't transmit Tumah further, it's called puzzle. If it could transmit Tumah further, it's called Tameh. By Chulin can never become more than a Sheni. Truma can never become more than a Shlishi, and Kachim could become a Ravi. So La'acha Bi'asai, after the person goes to the mikveh, so now he's at full Yom and he's a Sheni. Mitame es HaKodesh. He makes Kachim Tameh. Why? Because Kachim could become a Ravi. So Sheni makes Kodesh a Shlishi, which could yet make a Ravi. So therefore it's Tameh, because it's no good, and it could transmit further. Upaisel es Truma. But he only disqualifies Truma, because Truma Shlishi is the end of the line. So as a Sheni, he makes Truma Shlishi. He can't go any further, so he passes. Div Rameh. That's the opinion of Rameh. The Chachamim say, although usually Kachim could become a Ravi, that's by a regular Sheni. Tful Yom is a weak Sheni. And therefore, Paisel B'Kodesh B'Truma, it's the end of the line, even for Kachim and for Truma. Or Mutter B'Chulin and B'Maiser. A Sheni, since both Chulin and Maiser can't go further than a Sheni, so a Sheni is permitted to Chulin and Maiser Sheni. V'imbal al Mikdash, if he enters the Mikdash, Bein lefnei biyasai, bein la'achar biyasai, whether before he went to the mikveh or after the mikveh, he's chayiv. Now, that's where he was chayiv to go to the mikveh midoraisa. The next Mishnah talks about where he was chayiv to go to the mikveh only midrabanan. Kol hatoin bias mayim midivrei soifrim. All he had to do was go to the mikveh to remove rabbinical tumah. So that rabbinical tumah is a sheni even before he goes to the mikveh. Since he's a sheni before he goes to the mikveh, mitame es HaKodesh, before he goes to the mikveh, he's mitame kachim, because it makes it a shlishi, which it could turn to make a ravi, so that's tameh. Upaisel es truma, he makes truma shlishi, which is the end of the line, and therefore it's paisel. Umuta b'chulin and b'mais, and he's permitted b'chulin and mais. Divra meir. The chachamim say a sheni, even though he can't make a shlishi b'mais, but we don't allow him to eat maiser. The chachamim oisim b'mais, we doesn't allow him to eat maiser sheni. La'achar biyasai, once he goes to the mikveh, and it was in the beginning Truma D'Rabbanan, he's allowed to eat everything, and he doesn't have to wait for nightfall. La'achar biyasa muta b'kulan. V'im bo'al hamikdash, if he entered the temple, bein lifnei biyasa, since it's only a Truma D'Rabbanan, whether before he goes to the mikveh, bein la'achar biyasa potter, he's potter from Koris, since it's only Truma D'Rabbanan. Kolaton bias mayim, whatever needs going into the water to immerse, bein medivrei Torah, whether it's biblical, bein medivrei sofrim, whether it's rabbinical, when it comes to the high standard of the meichatas, mitame es meichatas, he's mitame the water mixed with the ash, ve'es efer chatas, and the ash of the chatas, ve'es hamazer meichatas, and also the person that was prepared in purity to sprinkle the mechatas, b'maga or b'masa, whether he touches it or whether he carries it. Ha'ezoiv hamuchsher, hyssop that was prepared for the procedure of the mechatas, v'amayim she'ein mukdashim, or the water that was not yet mixed with the ash, uklei rekim, or the empty vessel that was prepared, uklei rekim ator lechatas, b'mago b'mas, becomes tummy, whether he touched them, this person, whether he carried them. Only b'maga, these three lower level, the hyssop and the water without the ash and the keli, it's only if he touches them, avaloi b'masa, not if he carries them. Now remember, we said we use in the process hyssop. Kol ezov sheyesh lo shem levai, any hyssop that has an escorting name, like Roman hyssop or Greek hyssop, puzzle. It's no good. Ezov zeh. If we say this is the regular hyssop, that's kosher. What's an example of escorting names? Ezav Yavan, Greek hyssop, Ezav Koichelis, blue hyssop, Ezav Raimi, Roman hyssop, Ezav Midbari, wild hyssop, puzzle. Vishal Truma Tameya, and of Truma Tameya, if the hyssop is of contaminated Truma, which has to be destroyed, which has to be burnt, puzzle. Vishal Tahira, Lo Yaza. If it's Truma Tahira, you shouldn't use it, the hyssop, for spraying, because you might damage it and waste truma. You're not allowed to waste truma. But if you did use truma tahira, it's kosher. Ein mazin loy b'yonkos, you can't use hyssop that has just begun to bud. V'loy b'smaris, and surely when it's younger and it's only has berries on it. Ein chayavin ala yonkos al biyas hamikdash. However, if you sprayed with budding hyssop somebody on the third and the seventh day, and then he goes into the temple, he doesn't get chorus. Rebbe Eliezer, even if you used hyssop that's so young that it only had berries. What does it mean, young ones? Give oilin, it means that it has buds shaloi gamlu, that didn't fully ripen and open up. Ezav shehizabai, the hyssop that's good for mechatas, kosher l'tar b'yasam, is also a kosher for the purification of the biblical leper, where they dip the hyssop in the blood. Liktu le'etzin. Now here's an interesting thing. If the hyssop was gathered for fuel, it wasn't gathered for food, v'nafla alav mashkin, and it was moistened to be mekabel tuma, but we're not worried, because since it was gathered for fuel, it's not susceptible to contamination. Therefore, menagva, you wipe it off, v'ukasher, and it can be used for the ritual of the mechatas. Liktay la'achalin, but if you gathered it as food, because you could munch on hyssop, v'nafla of mashkin, and became moistened to be mekabel tummy, you can't use it, because maybe it got tummy. Afal pisha nigva, even though you dried it, puzzle. Liktay l'chatas, what if you gathered it to be used for the chatas procedure? Does that render it susceptible to contamination? So Rameir holds, K'malaket la'achlin, it's like it was collected for food, div Rameir. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yisrael, Rabbi Shimon, Aimer, no. You didn't collect it for food, it's like K'malaket la'itzim, it was like collected for fuel, and therefore even if it's moistened, you just dry it off, and you could use it for the procedure. And finally, the last mitzvah that tells us, even though it doesn't say over here, Agudas Ezav. However, we learn out Gzeirah Shava. It says elsewhere Agudas Ezav. So here by the Mitzrayim, when they put the blood on the doorpost, they used an Agudas Ezav, a bundle. So we learn out here too, it has to be a bundle of 3. So mitzvahs Ezav shloisha klachim. It has to be 3 stems. Uvehem shloisha givoilin, and from each stem has to come out 1 branch. Rabbi Yehuda shall shloisha, from each stems have to come out 3 branches. So 3 stems and 9 branches. Ezav sheyesh by shloisha klachim, a hyssop that has 3 stems together. Mifaskai, you separate them. V'oidai, and you tie them together. Piskai v'loy agada, you separate them, you didn't bundle them up. Or agada v'loy piska, you bundled it up, but you didn't separate them. Or loy piska v'loy agada, you didn't separate them, you didn't bundle them up. It's kosher. Rabbi Yaisi says mitzvahs ezav, the mitzvah of hyssop shloisha klachim, 3 stems. Ubehem shloisha givaylim, each stem has 3 branches. Once you start with 3 stems, then v'shirav shnayim. If one of the stems falls away, if it's shiorei mitzvah, then you could do other sprinklings with only 2 stems left. V'gardumav, and you needed branches, but if the branches snap off and you just have left a stub of it, kolshu, even the smallest amount, it is okay. And now we turn, since it's the 6th day of the week, we learn Taras, a Gemara from Masechtas Nida, Ezehu Odain. We said that what is red, that if the blood is red, then the woman is a Nida. We said Kedama Maka, like the blood of a wound. So asks the Gemara, my Kedama Maka, what do you mean the blood of a wound? Rabbi Yehuda, Shmuel, Kedam Shor Shochet, like the blood of a slaughtered ox. Says the Gemara, V'lema Kedam Shchita. Why didn't you just say the blood of Shchita? Iyama Kedam Shchita, Avamina Kekula Shchita, like the full duration of the blood that comes out. Kamash Balan Kedam Hamaka, like the initial cut of the knife. Ketchilas HaKosh El Sakin, the first smiting of the knife when it cuts the neck. Ula says, it's Kedam Tzipor Chaya. It's like the blood that comes out from the wound of a live bird. Says the Gemara, Ibaylu, Chaya Lafuke Shachet. When it says a live bird, does that mean to exclude the blood of a shchita? It means the blood of a healthy bird, but not the blood of a weak bird. Teku tishbi yataritz kushes v'bayis. We'll have to leave that question to Eliyahu Hanavi. And now the Zohar tells us, Rabbi Yudai, Shol Leila Reb Shimon. Rabbi Yudai asked Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the author of the Zohar, Yom Echad, the Ara Ime Ba'archa, one day when he met him on the road. Amalei, he said to him, Rebbe, I don't understand something. Haksiv b'parshasa de Shabbos, it says in a parsha of Shabbos, the Amar Yeshaya, Dichsiv Kayama Hashem l'sarisim. So Hashem said to the eunuchs. The eunuch is somebody who was castrated. Kayama Hashem l'sarisim, asher yishmu eshabsoisai, that keep my Shabbos. Uvacharti b'asher chafotzti, and uvacharu b'asher chafotzti, and chose what I wanted. Umachazikim b'brisi, and they uphold my covenant. What is the pasuk talking about? V'nasati lehem, I will give them bebeisiyu b'chamasa yod v'shem. I will give them in my house and my walls a yod, a hand, and a name. What is this talking about? Mokamairi. What's the pasuk talking about? Amalei. So Reb Shimon Bar Yochai told him, Kaputkoi. He called him by a nickname, Kaputka, because Reb Yudai came from Kaputkoi. Chamora ketir betifza unichis. Take your donkey, tie it with a rope, and come down. The milei deraisa boyitzachusa, because the explanation of a pasuk needs a clear mind. O apche la'achurach, or turn your donkey around, vizila basroi, and follow me and back of me, usachavein libach, and pay attention. Amalei, beginei damar avidna orcha. Because I was hoping to meet the master, I came on this way. Or basrei damar, and I will follow the the master, and estakel b'shrinta. And therefore I will behold the shchina, because it says, when two people are learning, shchina kenegdai. Amalei, he says, Tochazi, come and see, Mila da ha'ukma chavraya. These words have already been established by the colleagues in the Beis Medrash. However, v'loi prisha mila, but they didn't fully interpret how the words flow. Ko amar Hashem la'sarisin, so Hashem says to the eunuch. A eunuch is one who is not with a woman. Mansarisim, what does it mean, the eunuchs? Ilu inon chavraya, these are the Talmudic students, the mishtadlei baraisa, who learn Torah, and the whole week they stay in yeshiva away from their wives. Umisarse garmayu kol shita yoimin deshapsa, they hold back their bones, and they don't have sexual relationships with their wives all the 6 days of the week, v'lo baraisa, and they weary themselves in the Torah. Or belayla deshapsa, and on Friday night, mizorze gamayu, they with alacrity have bizivuga delhain, they energize themselves with intimacy with their wives. Mishum de yode roza ilah, they know the secret above. Bishata de matronisa is davgis b'malka, because they know that that's when the matron shrinta mates with Kutcha Berichu. They know that on Friday night there's a special yichud between the Shechina and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore they want to mate then as well. V'inun chavraya, and these Talmudic students, the Yodan Razada, that know this secret, mechavlin lubayu lememnusa demarehain. They direct their thoughts to match the mating of their master. And because of this, they're blessed, that the fruit of their womb, not their womb, the fruit of their loins, and the fruit of the womb of the wife that night are blessed. Yishmeru as Shabsaisai. Yishmeru doesn't mean they only watch. It means they wait for my Shabbos. V'do d'chsiv asher yishmeru k'mo da'at amar v'oviv shomer es hadover. Yaakov Avinu, Yosef's father, waited for the fulfillment of Yosef's dreams. So it says asher yishmeru as Shabsaisai. They wait to mate on my Shabbos. The ikrin sarisim vaday, they hold themselves back like eunuchs the whole week. Begin l'chakol l'shabsa, to wait for Shabbos, l'ashkecha rava demoreyan, to find the favor of their Creator. Dechsiv uvacharu ba'asher chafatzti, they chose to choose that which I desire, just like the Shechina mates. My kasher chafatzti. Does ivuga de matronisa, when the Shechina mates with Kutcha Berichu, or machazikim beribrisi, and they hold to my covenant. What does that mean? That they what does it mean that they're machazikim beribrisi? When they hold back, they're strengthening the midah of Yesoid, which is Yesoid is shmiras habris, that they have control over their male organ. Therefore, Machzikim bebrisi kulachad, bebrisi stam, as the Bir Azayir explains, that's the midah of Yesoid. Zakor chulkei, fortunate is the portion, the man is skadish b'kedusha da, one who sanctifies himself with this holiness, v'yada razada, and knows this holiness. Of course, we will add that if the wife needs the attention, then of course it's a mitzvah to fulfill the mitzvah of Oina. Now finally we learn the Rambam in Hilchos Shabbos. The Rambam tells us, if somebody makes up, let's say Tony, to build for him a courtyard or a wall, or to harvest his field, or he hired him, shana ishtayim, for a year or two, livnus like chatz or alita like karim, to build a courtyard or plant a vineyard. Imois hamalacha b'medina, if the work was in their province, or within 2,000 amos of the city limits, he can't allow him to work on Shabbos, because everybody will know that he's doing his work. The onlookers who will not know that he contracted him for a long time will think he hired him to work on Shabbos. But if the malacha was outside of the city limits, then it's mutter. She'ein sham Yisrael, there's no yid there, she'yira es ha'paylan, that sees the workers kishein oisim b'Shabbos, when they work on Shabbos. And he didn't hire him to work on Shabbos. He hired him to do the job whenever he wanted to. V'chein mutter la'adam lahaskir karmoi sadeu l'goy, he could rent his vineyard or his field to a guy. Afal pishu zayran v'naitam b'Shabbos, even though the guy plants them, or plants vegetables or trees on Shabbos, because the guy is renting the field, he's doing his own work. The one who sees it knows, it's hired by a guy, or he gave it to them as a sharecropper, where the guy gets the produce of the field. However, if it isn't the derech in that area to rent to a guy, the davish Hashem Yisrael ba'olav karyolav, if people still say that's Rabbi Weiss's field, ve'ein derech roi v'anshei oisa makom la'askirai, and it's not the derech of that place to rent out to a guy, or elitin le'barisus, or give it with a sharecropper arrangement, then also la'askira l'guy, then you can't rent it to a guy. Mipnei sha'guy oisa ba'oisa malacha malacha b'Shabbos. People, he's doing work on Shabbos, and people will say he's doing work in Rabbi Weiss's field. V'unikra al Shema Yisrael ba'olav, and it's called after Rabbi Weiss's field, and then it will be Maris Ayin. We want to thank you for joining us, and wish you a wonderful evening.